Hey everyone, really appreciate you being here, taking the time out of your busy day. We have some really exciting stuff for you, I think. It's not me, but it is going to be my guest speaker who's going to go through the exciting stuff. My name is Jeff Kyle. I run mission critical solutions for Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, and we're the ones who deliver SAP solutions, SAP HANA, to customers worldwide. And I'd like to take just a minute to talk about what we do for customers at HPE in an SAP environment, and then I'm going to turn it over to my partner, Dave Carlisle, who's our CTO at Hewlett-Packard, to walk through how we're living this migration and this journey to S4, HANA, and everything that is SAP. Really exciting journey. HPE has been in this game for a long time. We have been partners with SAP for 29 years. And I directly have been working on HANA since its inception. In fact, part of the first development group that worked to bring HANA as an in-memory database to the market. So we're invested in this 100%. We have deployed over 23,000 servers to HANA environment solutions. #1 in scalability and #1 in availability. So it's not just about the performance with HPE, it's about performance and availability. And we are here and committed to your journey with SAP as well. This partnership has led us to be #1, the #1 infrastructure provider for SAP HANA environments. So I invite you to come to our booth, 158, if you want to take a look at that Gartner report. And I advise you to go with a trusted partner who's committed and dedicated to this SAP solution environment. And when I say committed and dedicated, I actually mean it. We're doing it. We are eating our own dog food, as we say in the industry, and we are doing some exciting things with SAP in HPE IT. So at this time, I want to bring up Dave Carlisle, who will walk you through our journey. Thank you. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Jeff. Awesome. Hey, everybody. Honored to be here, glad to be here, and thanks, Jeff. Actually, sincerely, one of the cool things about working at HPE is working with our engineering teams and Jeff and his whole organization. So really, really great collaboration. So I'm going to give you a run through of what we're doing internally right now within HPE, and we have a lot going on right now. So and we're going to try to cover quite a bit of ground today. We don't have a lot of time, so I know we have some time afterwards. So note your questions, and we can go through anything that we touch on that you want to follow up on. So in a nutshell, we have a very, very extensive SAP footprint today. So if you are one of our customers and you've ordered products or services from us, the order management, the supply chain activity, everything about that core transaction management, all the way through to where we book the revenue, et cetera, is all managed by SAP. Okay, and that is not just on the order management side, but also on the service delivery side. So if you were to have an issue in your ecosystem, all the support entitlement, the warranty information, our parts supply chain, our mission critical parts supply chain, all of that is all SAP based as well. And then the horizontals at the bottom, as you might expect, given the extent of deployment up above functionally, our corporate financials are all SAP based, and a lot of our master data, pricing, product structures, those are all SAP based as well. Now, even though we run a very, very large ecosystem today, we're in the midst of transforming that. But before we start to talk about that, I'll just give you a little bit of perspective in terms of what we've done with HANA to date, okay? So a very extensive HANA footprint that's already deployed, and I'll just touch on these really briefly. So one is classic BWA on HANA story. So our flagship example here is our supply chain analytics. So in terms of improving cycle times and getting better insights into what the planning functions are, that was a huge win for us. Financial planning, so for those of you familiar with SAP, this is BPC on HANA. It was actually our first implementation. We replaced a homegrown custom solution with this, so it was a very nice move for us, both in terms of capabilities, as well as being able to drop the legacy debt that we had. And then last but not least, this was what we call our HANA-powered quote-to-cash. Essentially, to start, this was a large sidecar. And it was connected to our largest single environment inside the company, which was running about 40, at the time, about 43 billion of our revenue. And this was, the purpose of this was really twofold. One was the classic sidecar story in terms of, acceleration without disruption and those kinds of things. And then the other element was to be able to start to get our operations teams fully prepped in terms of running this in a mission critical landscape. And so that kind of sets the stage, if you will, for what we're doing now. And what we're doing now, just in a nutshell, coming off of some of the divestitures and the spins that we did, HPE is a narrower, more focused company. And so we don't need the architectural footprint that we had when we were the larger HP at 112-ish billion, okay? So we're going through a complete replatforming exercise. So greenfield, brand new S4, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But these are just, I'll make a quick pass through here in terms of some of the drivers. Simplified business processes. This is very much a business-led transformation. It's not an IT-led transformation. And there's a huge emphasis on simplifying our processes. And that kind of bleeds right into the second item in terms of if you're some of our customers, you might know that there's some opportunities for us to improve your experience with us, okay? So the external perspective and the outside-in experience for HPE is a big focus of this. We don't have currently the legacy architecture that we had, frankly, wasn't conducive to being able to acquire companies and bring them in to a very streamlined, coherent architecture. So that's another component. HP Next, that's the name of our business-led transformation that our IT program is supporting. And last but not least is what we call our financial architecture. And really there's two components to this. One is the envelope reduction that we want to achieve overall from an IT standpoint. But arguably more important than that is that we want to concurrently flip the ratio of the budget in terms of the percent of the budget that's on run versus legit impactful innovation, right? And so those two trajectories, right, if you're only looking at one, you could tactically manage bringing a budget down, but maybe not strategically move the needle in terms of how much of the remaining budget left is on legit innovation. So that's a huge element for us in terms of when we get to the end, not just the envelope, but again, maximizing every single dollar and pulling it out of run and getting it onto, like I said, legit innovation, like impactful innovation. So those are kind of the drivers. A couple of stats. Won't spend a lot of time here, but you can kind of see what we're doing in terms of along the bottom. So roughly, we manage about 850 apps today in our enterprise. We're going to roughly cut that in half down to about 400. Okay, so a lot of complexities coming out. You'll see that in an upcoming slide. From an S4 standpoint, an ERP standpoint, the broader HP that we come from, we had a total of, depending on how you count reference systems versus transactional systems, there were 10 ECC environments at the end of the day. And we're taking that down to a single global S4 instance. Okay, so it's a pretty big difference in terms of our past that we're ring fencing and our future, which we're bringing up new. Okay, the 90-10 that you see there, it's easy to say, right? We all say that we want to be standard. If I ask the audience, do you promote customization? Nobody's going to raise their hand. But if I ask, do you have more customization that you want? Probably most of us are going to raise our hands. So we have a lot of rigor around that. I'm going to talk through that over a coming set of slides as far as how we're trying to manage our way through that. But anyway, that gives you a few stats in terms of kind of the degree of simplification. This is kind of an overview, a very summarized overview of our HP Next kind of structure. And I'll touch on the top row, really, and that is back to that whole 90% out of the box, 10% customization goal, right? We really had to, we come from what I call an engineering culture, so frankly, we like to turn knobs. And we turned a lot of knobs in the past, and so that led to a lot of customization. So changing, moving the needle there is complicated, and it's multidimensional because we really needed to up-level our maturity internally to say, okay, wait a minute, let's be really clear about what really strategically will differentiate us. So what will make a difference, legitimate difference from a customer perspective, or a legitimate difference from a financial perspective that's overriding that would justify it. And so the business went through, we categorized all of our go-forward processes, reduced a stunning amount, pulled out about 50% of the processes from our process inventory, and then went through a prioritization in terms of categorizing the processes into these 3 buckets, which is strategic, core, foundational. And strategic is where we want to spend our 10%, right? That's where there's something really important, either for you guys as customers or for us internally, that we would be willing to make a customization. And that has to have vice president level sign off, and there's a huge amount of rigor around that. We're in the process now, so we'll see when we get to the total end if we hit the 10%. But I just wanted to stress it because it is a huge part of what we're doing and trying to make sure that we achieve. And then you can see at the bottom, we have a lot more going on than just SAP. So this is it's a replatforming exercise, so brand new analytics platform, new CPQ, a whole new integration architecture. But S4 is our pillar, if you will, our transactional pillar. Again, about our approach, okay? So there's the what and being clear on architecturally where you're going, but the how is, frankly, equally, if not more important, okay? And so one element is, just out of the box, what is best in class for a given process area, okay? And that's not something necessarily, everybody's probably familiar with those types of approaches, so the activate methodology, those kinds of things. And then what we did is, okay, for each, and you can see here the L0, the L1, and the L2 for quote to cash here reflected. And then what we did was for each functional area, right, we didn't start off with the business and say, let's just sit down and document our wish list, and go through a requirements list. We actually said, okay, well, for this process area, here's what's considered best in class in terms of the process, and here is that process actually running live in a sandbox system with our data, so it's data that's familiar to those users, and then we go through, kind of a process of why not, But it's a very different approach for us, and the whole goal is to try to, not just the 90-10 in terms of trying to maximize the out of the box, but maximize our speed, okay? And so that's that's kind of a nutshell, a summary of the approach. Now, building on that, here we go. We have the mechanism, if you will, that we're using is conference room pilots, okay? And Deloitte's our SI partner and is helping us with this. And essentially, this is where we come into the room, if you will, together. And there's really 3 major inputs, okay? So one input is just anywhere where we've got. I'll start from the bottom. Anywhere we've got really strategic input from a business process standpoint, okay? The second one is a pre-configured system, which I mentioned before, and I can't stress that enough. So for our finance business, when they came in to see central finance, they saw their data as of last quarter, right? And so even though the experience was completely different, right? The Fiori experience and the apps, at least their data was something they knew and they could see and they could relate to. Again, trying to manage how fast we can go and manage and balance our management of change, pressures that are on us. So, we walk through and then you can see there on the right, bottom right-hand side. Out of that, we might find an area where somebody says, hey, I think there's a customization, a gap here that might require customization. And then that's where that governance and rigor starts to come into play in terms of making sure that it's something that really makes sense. Okay, so we're going to take some time and step through each of these. I'm just kidding. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to toggle from this slide to the next slide, just so that you can get kind of a quick visual, right, of how much complexity we're pulling out. So for one of our core transactional flows, this is what it looks like. And it pretty much looks like this in production today. We started pulling stuff off, but this is where we came from, okay? So I'll just go ahead and toggle forward, and then you can kind of get a quick visual. Go back. But it gives you just a quick read of how much complexity is pulling out. Now, the slides are a little bit IT-centric, right? But the flip side of the coin, right, is that there's a stunning amount of business process simplification and operational costs that are also coming out, right? And in addition to that, the business is getting a totally different capability set, right? So for us, the S4 implementation is really firing on all cylinders in terms of functional business impact and ties to revenue growth, as well as all of the operational efficiencies and IT cost reductions that we're after, okay? A big one for us here, and these are screenshots of our actual S4 environment. So we're using S4 as a mechanism to transform our user experience fundamentally, okay? So our end users will not have SAP GUI on their desktop. They have a web browser, they're using Google Chrome, and they access via a simple URL that they can hit over the open internet. As long as they're authenticated, they're in, right? So it's super simple to use, modern, mobile enabled, but the functionality and the capabilities are also different. So it's not just about, oh, hey, it's in a web browser and I can access it over the internet. You can see from the screenshots, right, that looks nothing like the SAP GUI. And the drill down that's reflected on the right-hand side, that is, that you can further drill down into it, and so there's embedded analytics that are in the system. But for us, this was actually a huge item because it helps reset people's paradigms around SAP. So we're a heavy SAP shop, and we have been for over 20 years. But as people get used to a traditional ECC upgrade or playing an enhancement pack, right? And they really didn't see a huge difference, right? And so by coming in with a completely different experience, right, it helps kind of shake people's mindsets up. This is a totally different world, it's a totally different experience, it's totally different capabilities. So it's a vehicle to help us kind of drive change. It's like, guys, leave the past in the past, because this is a completely different experience, okay? So that's the, I stress it because it is actually a really key element of helping us drive change and getting a modern experience in place. More broadly, we'll kind of shift into some of the infrastructure aspects. So we are shifting, or already have actually shifted our IT workloads quite a bit. So similar to all of you, we're consuming, we consume a good mix of SaaS, so a good mix of the SAP products from a SaaS standpoint. So Ariba, Concur, et cetera. IBP is a huge implementation for us. We also have other SaaS vendors as well. And then we've shifted from traditional infrastructure to a legit private cloud. We still run some traditional dedicated, so our global S4 instance, right? That's not a virtualized environment in terms of the database server that's running that. But this is just kind of a general trajectory that that I thought would share with you in terms of where we've headed. And then in terms of what we're doing, of course, as you would expect, we're leveraging all of the products from Jeff's team and the other engineering teams. We work quite a bit with the engineering teams, and actually even the original HANA development, right? We shipped tapes of our internal systems over to Waldorf and did testing there. But as you might expect, right, we're running all of our latest gear. Synergy, our S4 platform, is on our Superdome Flex, et cetera. So, and then our Point Next services, I'll just make one brief comment here. So from an IT standpoint, in terms of managing our budget and where we want to go and the degree of OpEx that we want to have, we're leveraging our GreenLake services from our own services group to do some of our run and operation, right? And so that's just, we're just consuming it as an internal service, if you will. But some of the same folks that I designed the landscape with are the same folks that you'll talk to in our HP booth, literally the same folks. So, so good, I think, from a customer standpoint in terms of connectivity to what we're doing internally. And then all of this can actually be consumed as a service, building on my comments in terms of you can consume the physical infrastructure as a service, or you can consume it as a service all the way up through the the operations as well. Okay, so a lot of flexibility in terms of how you consume it, whether that's even if you're on a private cloud on-prem. So, and then lastly here in terms of the infrastructure footprint, so we are leveraging our Superdome Flex platform, and the Flex part of our product name is actually really relevant for us internally. So, so this flexibility in terms of being able to add compute modules and scale up over time allows us, because we're benchmarked just like any other IT shop. So we don't we have to meet our targets and track externally all those kinds of things, right? So by using Superdome Flex, we are scaled. We didn't buy all of our infrastructure up front for the 9 quarters that it's taking us to do the entire transformation, okay? So we bought procured just what we needed, okay? And so we look like the left-hand side right now, and we will literally be scaling up as we go to our full deployment, which is the one on the right. So it's actually a real working example of the flexibility of the platform. So so for Jeff and team has been awesome. So And then let's see here. And then the other element I'll just mention here real briefly is just the sheer scale. Okay, so that on the right-hand side, if that rack was fully loaded, that's 24 terabytes of DRAM in that so as one system, right? So one CPU core has access at full memory speed to 24 terabytes, right? Which is huge, right? You can do a lot with that. So. And then to kind of wrap up here, I think we're at the end. A couple of things I'd stress, business alignment, and I think sometimes it's easy to say those words, similar to being, customization versus standard, but having tops-down business support and being more business-led than IT-led is absolutely fundamental for what we're doing, right? Because it's not a traditional upgrade. We're fundamentally changing. Every user's experience across the globe is fundamentally changing, right? And roles are changing, and roles are going away. And so driving that change sometimes isn't easy. So without the partnership and the two in the box, and when I say partnership, I really mean it, right? Deep partnership that you're driving, aiming at the same goal, it can get rocky without that. So from an IT standpoint, just clarity on what that North Star really is, and being super clear about it, because not everything is a perfectly straight path, right? Sometimes you have to take a few jaunts in order to get to the end game, but if you're not clear about what that end game is, you can start making a whole bunch of side jaunts without the right context, and next thing you know, you start losing control of your architecture. So super clear on that. The technology shifts. There's a lot that's changing, right? So whether it's Fiori, whether it's HANA, so making sure you're really up to speed on that is important. The training, kind of building on that comment, right? Making sure your people have the right skills, that you've augmented with the right skills, because it's a different animal. It's not an ECC upgrade. I've stressed already about management of change. That's huge. And then leveraging experience, right? Whether it's our Point Next services or some of the partners. Again, how you augment is a very, very important part of the strategy. I think more so now than it ever has been, just because of the degree of change and how fast the expectations are to achieve them. So. Hope you got some value out of that. I know we're a little bit over, but if you have any follow-up questions, we can head over here and cover them. So thank you very much for attending. Appreciate it.